Hey everybody, and welcome to the Osterweis debate lecture series. My name is Jamie, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about refutations, or why nobody else is correct and only you are right. So first, what is the most common way that people rebut? Unfortunately, I think most people don't do refutations or rebuttal correctly. What most people do is, instead of trying to show why the other person is wrong, which is what rebuttal is, they only focus on showing why they are saying is correct. So what does this look like? A common motion that you might see is in debate is, this house would ban zoos. So should we ban zoos or not? And a very common argument you might hear is, you say that the zoos are bad because they keep the animals in bad conditions. Maybe they don't feed them enough. Maybe they don't keep them in really small cages. Some rebuttal you might hear initially is, you might say, look, it doesn't matter because the zoos make a lot of people happy, because kids get really happy when they see the zoo animals, and this is important. Or you might say, look, it's not correct because the zoos take a lot of their money and donate to wildlife conservation efforts and do other good things for animals. And these are smart and true arguments, and they relate to the motion. But if you think about what they're actually saying, they're not trying to show you why the zoos don't mistreat animals. They're not saying that at all. They don't disprove this argument. Instead, they're kind of stepping around it and saying these other arguments are more important. This is a concept known as weighing, and it's a very important part of the debate. But it's not what actually refutation is. If you want to learn about this, this is something that you can learn in a different lecture that we're going to also post by Aaron. But crucially, this isn't actually how you rebut an argument. So how do you actually beat back the argument? The first thing that you have to be able to do is think about how the argument happens. So a good piece of advice I've heard about this is to kind of close your eyes and visualize what the argument looks like, kind of like if you were watching it as a movie scene. So here, this is what you might see. You might see the zoo, and you might see the zoo mistreating the animals. Like, this is what happens in your head when you're visualizing the argument. So now that you can visualize this, you can think about what you have to prove is true for the argument to work. So first, you would have to prove that the zoo actually wants to mistreat the animals. And then you would also have to prove that the zoo has to be able to. And generally, these two questions are the most important questions that you have to ask yourself when thinking about how the argument works. Think about what people want to do and what are they able to do. Then you have to think about how they try to answer these questions, because presumably for their argument to work, they also had to have, said something about this. So they might say that the zoo wants to mistreat the animals, and this is because zoos want to save money. Smaller cages just save money, so the zoos will want to get smaller cages for the animals, and this is bad for the animals. So how would you prove that this argument doesn't work? Because it seems on face that some of these premises are true, that zoos generally do want to save money, that smaller cages are less expensive. The way that you go about it is obviously going to depend on case to case, but here are some good ways that you can think about how to rebut. First, try to think more deeply about who these groups are. So when you say zoos, that's kind of broad, but just a zoo could mean many different things. Is it the organization? Is it the people that make up the organization? And by going this deeper way of analyzing what zoos are, you might think, okay, zoos are made up of zookeepers. And most people who decide to make a living out of taking care of animals probably care a lot about animals and don't want to see them mistreated. You might also think about who else is relevant for the motion. So how do zoos actually get their money? They get the money from people coming in and paying visitors sales and buying merchandise, but they probably wouldn't want to do this if they see all the animals are clearly very upset because they're being mistreated, because this would make themselves feel unhappy. Finally, you can think about the full logical consequences of the argument. So if animals are really mistreated for their entire lives, they're probably going to be dying at younger and having lower lifespans, which would make zoos get more and more money to have to buy new animals. So if they are trying to save money, maybe they wouldn't want to mistreat the animals. So again, these are just a couple of ways that you can think about further analyzing whatever is necessary for the argument to work and trying to disprove it. This wouldn't work in every single instance, but these are good principles that you can use to begin thinking about how to prove our other arguments are wrong. So thank you so much, and best of luck at the Osterweis debate tournament.